Today is a sad day, ladies and gentlemen, because for the first time on the Did Glitch channel, I'm making a negative video, which, you know, I'm sure if you know anything about this album, you expected from the fact this video exists. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you thought that I would be coping as an Eminem fan, and I'd be talking about how much I love this album and how great it is actually, and how much of an underrated gem it is. Unfortunately not. Now, I do intend on, like with Tech 9, due to the fact that Eminem is one of my favourite artists, probably my favourite artist, to be honest, in music, I do intend on going back and talking about all of his projects on this channel, because I've listened to all of them quite a lot. It isn't work for me to think of, you know, stuff to talk about. It's not work for me to think of stuff to talk about for many of these videos, to be honest with you, because the whole point of this is that I want to talk about stuff that I enjoy talking about. But with Eminem's projects in general, I have listened to them a lot just through my life and just through, you know, wanting to listen to them because I enjoy them. So, like, I had thoughts on all of them. This album particularly, which is why I began talking about this album and not The Death of Slim Shady, which is also, you know, I thought about making the first one, but I will go back to that one eventually, and, you know, Kamikaze and all the others. But we'll start with this one, because I just have so much to say about this one. And I understand that, you know, you're probably thinking, yes, we understand, Revival's trash. Everyone said it. What's the point of this video existing? I can just move on to whatever. But I think the reason that this album frustrates me so much is because this album could have been really good. And it has elements in it that are pretty good. And it's more frustrating because those little gems are stranded on this album that realistically, everyone who isn't an Eminem fan, or even people who are Eminem fans who just heard this album was bad and thought, I'm not even going to waste my time listening to it, have not heard. And so they're stuck. They're stuck, stranded in this part of his career, which in some regards may as well not even exist. So for people who don't know the context of Revival, I'll give you a little quick context. I'm not going to go for the whole of his career. You understand who Eminem is. You understand who he is. But this was the first solo Eminem album in 4 years at the time of its release. The last one was MMLP 2, which was in some regards, especially if you listen to the lyrics quite closely, assumed to be the last album from Eminem. I don't know if that was ever actually explicitly stated, but there are definitely lyrics on the album, like in Bad Guy, and just the general vibe of the project that give the idea of that was going to be the last album. But then again, Eminem's one of those people who's been around so long that he's had a few last albums. Encore, Curtain Call, which obviously is the greatest hits, but still you can kind of call that like a you know, a last album farewell kind of thing. And so Revival was the first solo project in 4 years. It wasn't the first time he'd made music in 4 years. Things like the Shady 15 album, which just had loads of songs from people on the Shady Records label because of the 50th anniversary of it existing, I believe, hence Shady XV, Shady 15, whatever. Which, by the way, sick album cover. As well as the Southpaw soundtrack, which is a movie which was initially meant to star Eminem, but he decided not to be in it and decided just to make some music for it instead. Both of which have some pretty cool and important songs to Eminem's career on, such as like Guts Over Fear and Kings Never Die. Both of which kind of flag up some issues in terms of where Eminem was in that time of his career. What I mean by that is not the subject matter. In fact, you know, with songs like Guts Over Fear and Kings Never Die specifically, talking about like where he was in his career at that time, feeling like he was on a bit of a downfall and not knowing if there's much to write about anymore and how to write about it and all this kind of stuff, and you know, will his legacy continue, I think make those songs really interesting and fascinating parts of his discography, and if anything, I think I highly respect them because of that. Kings Never Die specifically, I love. I think that song's amazing, and I'm glad that it got included on his Curtain Call 2 Greatest Hits album recently, because now people can hear it more without having to go out of their way to find the fact that the Southpaw soundtrack even exists and find it through that. What I'm talking about in terms of the red flags are the fact that some of the songs on the Shady 15 album made by Eminem are just weird. A specific example I want to bring up is Fine Line, which is one of the multiple like Eminem songs on the album. A few of them, you know, are him with a feature, or him with like, you know, Bad Meets Evil with Royce, of course, or another one is like him on a cypher. But Fine Line is interesting in the fact that it's like produced kind of badly, which is like kind of fascinating, because as much as I like the song and I enjoy it, like the chorus and some of the pronunciations of words are just mixed badly, so you can't understand what he's saying, which is baffling. Where this is you know, an artist who's working with, you know, so much money, who, you know, is, I think to this day, like the top selling artists of the 21st century, like male artists of the 21st century, of the 2010s, I think specifically. Obviously, he's got Dre a phone call away. He himself has produced for years and years. He's produced for probably a lot of songs you don't even realize he's produced for. And so it's like, okay, this is mixed badly and this is weird, but like, you know, maybe that's just they didn't care about it and put it on a compilation track. Should they have cared about it? Of course, they're selling a product to a lot of people. But okay, he won't be like this on his Revival album, which is called Revival, which clearly must be a big deal to him, right? Right. So then we get to Revival in 2017, in December 2017 specifically. I got this album for Christmas, and in some ways I think it was one of the first albums I ever had. Like, the first albums I bought for myself when I was younger were the LMFAO albums, which is a whole nother story. But like, just in terms of where I was when this album came out, I was 15. I think I started to like realize that I had a music taste and I could listen to music outside of the radio. And I saw that this album was coming out because it had a rollout, like a proper rollout, which he hasn't done a lot for his more recent projects afterwards, which this album is kind of the reason for that. But I saw it was coming out, near Christmas, and knew I liked some of Eminem's stuff on YouTube and, you know, on the radio back in the day. So I asked my mum if she could get me this new Eminem album, and I got it, and it took me a while to listen to it, and I listened to it out of order at high school, to and from where we did our PE lessons, because that was the school system we had for some reason at that school. We'd bus to a different high school to do PE. I don't understand, man. I listened to the songs out of order, and because I'd never listened to an album before in full, I'd only listened to like compilation tracks, like the Now CDs. I was like, yeah, I get bored listening to it all in order, but of course I get bored listening to it all in order. Listening to one person for an hour, that's boring. And so I remember like telling people like, this album's great, because I just like didn't know much about music. I didn't know much about what made music good or like what I liked, and so I was just like, oh, I like some of these songs. There's some songs I think are great. It must be a good album. Obviously I've gone back and no. So let's go into it more specifically. This album is fascinating to me for so many ways. One of which being that it feels like two albums battling it out on the same track list. For one, it's 19 songs, which isn't super unexpected for Eminem. An hour 17, which is quite long. And this was a big controversy when it came out. No rap features other than like Phresher, who does a chorus or a hook on Chloraseptic. Other than that, it's entirely like pop features. You've got Beyonce, Alicia Keys, ex-ambassadors Skylar Grey, Kalani, and Pink. Do I think that these artists do bad on the record? I personally do not. I think they do their jobs fine. I forgot Ed Sheeran's here as well. Oops, that's a controversial pick. But all of them do their job fine and do their job well. I don't think that they're an issue at all. And I would even defend this album in a way and say that if he wanted to make a project that was not entirely hip-hop and he wanted to make an album that had only pop features, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the initial rumblings around people not liking this because, like I said, it was the first album he'd released as a solo artist in 4 years. They were hoping he would have hip-hop features due to the fact that his last album as well, MLP2, only had one, which I think was Kendrick. So he'd already been like kind of pushing away from having rap features, and people were hoping this, you know, with being Revival, which is, you know, an interesting title to call for an album like this, it would have more. It didn't. I do feel like that definitely is an interesting choice. When I say that it's two albums fighting out together is because there's two very distinct themes going on in the album. One of which is clear by the album cover, is this patriotic thing of you know, the American flag, Eminem looking disappointed due to the American flag, and kind of the way that America is at the moment, which is a theme that appears on songs like Untouchable, Like Home, Nowhere Fast. I guess you could stretch that to Offended, and that's kind of it. A River as well, I suppose. But then you've also got this very different theme of the album, which I much prefer, potentially because I'm not American. Although I'm not saying I dislike the idea of being like, damn, America sucks right now, and talking about all the issues that America has going on. I think that's fine. I think that's interesting. I think that's good to come from an artist like Eminem, and it's not new. You know, like White America is a song that exists. He would you know, diss the president back in the day, like on his older projects. It's not a surprise that he has songs that are like, annoyed at the American system, annoyed about the racism still in the way that the police works there. Obviously, the whole Trump stuff. He's like dissing Trump on Like Home, which essentially is just a Donald Trump diss track. I don't dislike that these things exist. I don't dislike like the themes on the album. But like I said, there's this other side of the album which I much prefer, which is kind of, again, hinted at by the title, and really hammered in by the opener to this album, Walk on Water, featuring Beyonce, which, as much as I think is a quieter song that I would like, and I don't think is very interesting to listen to in terms of like the energy on it, I don't think that's the point. I do think that the sound effects of like walking through water and crunching ice, I do think are a bit cartoony and don't deserve to be on a song like this. But other than that, I don't think it's a bad song. I think it's actually a really good song that I just not am into, because like songs like Kings Never Die and the Sia record, he's diving into this idea that he's aware he's on the third act of his career, which is generally kind of saying like, well, I've done the rise, I've had my peak, I'm on the way down. And it's kind of grappling with this idea of like, how do I keep going? How do I keep things interesting? I think the standards for me are so high now. How do I, after writing hundreds and thousands of songs, keep beating my past self when I've done this so many times? Of course, I'm going to have like a moment that isn't as good. And I think that's such a fascinating thing to talk about. And again, like I've said about in the NF video, one of the reasons I love hip hop and one of the things that really drew me towards Eminem specifically is the fact that you can have albums and songs that talk about this like meta side of songmaking of like, let's talk about my career, let's talk about the songs I've made in the past, let's talk about you as a fan base and your expectations. And as a result, I think Walk on Water, even though musically isn't for me, I think it's an amazing opener to the album. Then as soon as we go to the next song, things start to go a bit downhill. Not because it's a bad song. In fact, I think Believe is one of my favourite songs on the album. It continues this idea of, do you still believe in me? Haven't I proved myself to you by now to show that even if I have a low moment that I can still get back up and outdo myself? But as much as I love this song, it's mixed badly. Like, I always thought when I was listening to it, when I was younger, it was just because I had like a CD rip on my phone, because I'd put it on my CD from the disk drive on my laptop, and I just put the lowest audio file on there. But I've listened to this song now on multiple phones, multiple devices, multiple types of headphones, internet, data, downloaded. It does not sound crisp and good. Like, I can get through it and I can still listen to the song and enjoy it, but there's that part in my head that's like, why does this sound like this? Following up, you've got Chloraseptic featuring Phresher, which I think starts off fine, and then by the end it's just kind of like boring and just like honestly hard to listen to. And reminder, I'm a huge Eminem fan. I probably like a lot of the songs that people think are bad from Eminem. I probably listen to a lot of the ones that are a bit cringe or a bit silly or have lines in that people think are stupid, and I still enjoy it for what it is, and I still actually really like listening to it on my own. Chloraseptic is one of the few songs I just hate. Like, I really don't like this song. After the album, they did the Chloraseptic remix, and fucking hell, it's so much better. Obviously, that was a response to the reception to this album, and it had Phresher doing a verse, and it had a 2 Chainz verse on it, and Eminem's verse on it is so good, and obviously it's like a precursor to Kamikaze, which is like really fun and interesting to listen to, knowing what came next. And it's so good when the beat cuts out, when he keeps going and flowing so well. It's so good, and that existing makes this version feel even worse. The instrumental isn't for me, but like I said, I think it works on the remix due to the energy everyone brings, but it's kind of, I hate using this word, it's kind of cringe on this album. The one lyric I always remember is like, girl, you got the prettiest thighs, and it's just like with the beat just like the bass blasting and it's like exploding too much, and it's just like, what is this? This is rap music? Maybe I don't like rap music, I guess. Following that is Untouchable, which, the intention behind the song is, anti-racism, talking about the white privilege that Eminem gets, and why are there black neighborhoods? Why is everyone segregated and all this kind of stuff? And it's not as bad as some people say, I don't think. Again, the sentiment behind the song is good, and the purpose of it. I remember a lot of people having a lot of problems with the song because it had a really good message, and yet it just sounded bad. It's a very weird sounding song, I will give it that. I don't think it's as bad as some people say. I'm definitely not going to say it's a good song, though. I don't love it personally. I don't actually know if I even have it on my Spotify. Moving on to River. I really like River. It's Eminem telling the story of cheating with a woman and getting her pregnant and making her have an abortion so they don't get stuck in a tangle. And I think it's delivered quite well. I remember my stupid self when I was younger, I thought it was real. Yes, there are silly lyrics on there. I don't care. I'll defend this song. I think River's a good song. Obviously, this was the song that was on the radio a lot, and this was like the radio hit they wanted. I think this song's good. I'm not going to say I don't like it, because I do. I understand people don't like it, but personally for me, which is what we're talking about, I like this song. The Remind Me intro exists, sure, whatever. There's nothing much to say about it. The actual Remind Me song, I think, is fun. It samples, I Love Rock and Roll, or whatever the song is that I Love Rock and Roll originally sampled, I think, is a thing. I think that song samples another thing. I could be completely wrong with that. Again, I think it's fun. I think it's alright. The Revival interlude, I think, is quite nice, because from what I understand, and cut this if I'm completely wrong, the singer of this passed away before it came out or something, and that's kind of the reason it's included. I could be wrong. It's a shame that her name isn't labeled on here. Like Home, I think is a little bit silly in terms of how patriotic it is, and the whole thing of stand up. But again, whatever. It's a Donald diss. You can tell he's passionate about it, and that's fine. But then the question is why is this on the same song as Bad Husband? Which, as much as some people don't like because of the ex-ambassador's hook and all this stuff, I think this is a really important song for the lore of Eminem and the story of who he is as a person, and the story of his artistry and stuff, and where he was when he started off. Because it's a song apologizing to Kim and taking responsibility for why he treated her the way he did, and putting his hands up and being I was wrong. And that doesn't mean it evaporates his sins or whatever the way he treated her. He definitely didn't treat her well. That's one of the biggest things I dislike about early Eminem, is he put that woman through fucking hell, right? But it is nice to see it at this point in his career, him talking about it and reflecting outside the situation. And kind of like I said, throwing his hands up, taking responsibility, and maybe being a bit more passionate and understanding of her side of things. Saying that she was bad to me, but I was bad to her too. And kind of summing up, it's just we are both just really toxic to each other. And again, I think it's a really important song, which a lot of people don't know exists because it's stuck on the Revival album. Placed right in between Like Home and Tragic Endings, which again, Tragic Endings I think is a decent song. But once again, why is it mixed like this? And you got Framed, which is one of the ones that people quite like. I quite like Framed. I think it's a very cool concept. It's the idea of making a Slim Shady song, and then that kind of crime and description actually ends up happening in real life, and then being oh god, now I'm kind of in trouble because people think it was me, or at least that's kind of one way of seeing it. Framed is fun. I like Framed. Framed is a fun song. I don't think it's the best sounding Slim Shady song. It's definitely one of people's favorites because of how it stands out in this album. I still think it's a fun song and definitely a worthy listen. Nowhere Fast, I do personally think is a bit overhated. I think it's alright. It's not my favourite song from him, but I think it's decent. It's a different sound for him, and I think a lot of the hate for this song comes from the extended edition, where it just kind of throws in the school shooter stuff, where it's talking about school shooting happened and how the country needs to sort that out. And then immediately goes back into the rest of the subject of the song, which I didn't really remember, but skimming through the lyrics, it seems to be a bit kind of what you end up seeing on Def Slim Shady a little bit, where it's, feeling bad about some of the controversial stuff he's said. But then I do understand the criticism that doesn't really fit with the chorus, because it doesn't. Going nowhere fast, okay. He is weird and silly. I don't hate it. Again, I think it's alright. There are definitely bits which feel a bit just weird. Don't sound the best. Offended is a song which I think could be much better if you gave it a proper hook, or just didn't have a hook at all, had a bit of a better beat. I think there's elements of the song which if you took apart and put something else there, would be better. I think you could keep the beat, add a better hook, remove the hook, add a better beat. I like the general idea of it. I like the song on its own, but every time it cuts the beat off and does the whole thing of nobody likes me, everybody hates me, and it's this is weird, isn't it? This is a fun song to listen to, but not too much. Need Me is interesting, because again, I think it's a fine song, but Eminem just isn't on it for half of it. It takes a really long time for Eminem to start doing stuff. Pink is a feature, but Pink essentially owns half the song, which again I don't think is a problem, but reminder, what is this album? It's just a mess of stuff, and it's not really ordered in a way where it kind of goes from chapter 1, chapter 2, things just kind of thrown all around, things aren't produced super well. I have no problem with Eminem trying to make an album that's different, and maybe trying to genre shift a little bit, or just be a bit more, as he's called this album, conscious, and talking about things actually happening to him, and more aware of serious stuff. I'm fully up for that. I really enjoy that, actually. Like I said, some of my favourite songs, or at least some of the things I respect most on this album, are Walk on Water, Believe, Bad Husband, Framed. But it's just a bit of a mess. And like I said, with the stuff of the production being a bit weak on some of the songs, it's what happened? Did you take too much time off from doing stuff? You still made songs over the few years that you had time off. But even then, like, it did feel like within those 4 years, there were definitely some songs like on Shady 15. Like the title track of Shady 15, I think, is just weird. Just him trying to be like very lyrical to just a boring beat. He had like a weird new voice for a while where he was doing like weird new flows and stuff. And it's like, whoa, you've been gone for longer and you've still been like doing good shit. What happened here? In Your Head Again is a song which I think is decent. I think it's overhated, but then again doesn't stand out too much to me. But Castle and Arose are two more songs like Bad Husband, which I just think are really important and really cool concept-wise. I guess you could throw Framed in there as well, but like in terms of like serious, Castle and Arose are amazing. Castle has this really cool concept of like him writing letters to Hayley throughout his career and like jumping years by years of him writing letters to her, kind of talking about what's happening in his career and like what he's trying to do and what he hopes is going to happen in the future. And then at the end, he like overdoses and like quits rap. And then Arose is told from him in a coma, feeling his family around him and talking about like the things he wants to talk about before he dies and how he wants to go back and change his ways if he gets another chance. And then it kind of like rewinds the tape as they put it in the song. And it rewinds to the final verse of Castle, where instead of like quitting rap, he's like, I'm gonna make a few more, and like he puts all of his album titles into this like not perfectly written like inclusion of all of his album titles in a sentence, but like pretty well done. He talks about coming back and quitting drugs and being like, where could this have gone? You know, who knows? And it's amazing. It's such a good emotional beat of the album. It's really cool to see this come, like I said, the third act of his career, which is like what this third act album kind of should be. And it's great, but again, trapped on this bad album. And that's why I think I'm a bit more generous to this album than some people are, because I think there's such highlights in the album. There's such lowlights as well, but a lot of the lowlights are just held back from just like not fitting the tone of the rest of the project and for some reason not being produced very well. I think if this was split into a couple projects of different themes, maybe even like 3 projects, like, you know, the America album, the third act of the Career album, and the just funny shit. Like, do I think that Heat is a horrendous song? No, it's fine. It's obviously meant to just be being silly and being stupid and making like stupid lines just for the sake of it because he likes doing that. But having Heat placed on a track list with Bad Husband, Like Home, Untouchable, it's so strange. And it's just whiplash. I think even if you just like structured this album better and cleaned up the production, it would be so much better. Would it be like a great album or good album? No, it would still be fine, but it would be better than what we got. And it's such a shame that I don't know if Eminem's kind of even like by this point fully grasped why this album failed. Like when it came out, obviously like, you know, it coming out and getting such a bad reception led to Kamikaze, which I think is an amazing album, somewhat. And like in his Kamikaze interviews, he talked about how like Dre was surprised about how people didn't like this album, and it's like, how are you surprised? Are you hearing the mixing on this shit? Again, not the entire album, but there's definitely like 2 or 3 songs where the mixing is just not good, and it's like, you let this be the big comeback album, really? Of course there's gonna be more eyes on it. Same with there being no rap features and this being the weird genre switch. You know, I think do that. I think I'm actually going to encourage doing that. But like, you can't be surprised that people aren't going to be super happy about it, especially when like your last project didn't really have much of like a presence from the rap scene. Of course, some people aren't going to like that, but if this is what you want to do, then you got to go ahead and you got to stick by it. But you can't be surprised that some people who have been waiting for a very long time for you to rap with, you know, modern day rappers aren't hearing it, because prior to MMLP2, the album prior to that, which was, you know, a solo album with a lot of features from rappers, was in 2010. So it at this point been like 7 years since he'd had many rap features. So I get it. And like, this is coming from someone who loves Eminem stuff and who likes a lot of projects that a lot of people don't. Or like, I likes a lot of songs that a lot of people don't, because I don't know, I just have weird taste, I guess. But like, I like a lot of the Eminem stuff that a lot of people don't like, and I defend his stuff, or at least like I am aware of what people think, but don't let it affect what I think. Or at least like, you know, I'm aware, yeah, this isn't the best thing ever, but I enjoy it and that's fine. Like, that's all that matters. So the fact that I have such weird opinions about this should maybe say something. That said, you know, this is an 8-year-old album by this point. You know, this led to Kamikaze, it led to Music People Murdered By, it led to the death of Slim Shady. You know, this happened, this album happened, and I'm not mad it happened. I think, you know, the stuff that came from it was worth it, I think. Although I do feel like the presence of this album definitely is what caused a lot of the change up in people's opinions on Eminem. We went from like this living legend to all of a sudden being like the cringy white rapper. Obviously, his music has changed since like previous album, but like some of the songs on Marshmallow Mathers LP2, content wise and lyrical wise, isn't too different to some of the songs he makes nowadays. But you know, this big almost like wake up call, I guess, to some people of like, oh, actually, this man can make bad music, kind of changed a lot of people's perception of him, I think. But yeah, there are my thoughts on this album. Not a lot of it's new, I guess. Some of it's maybe new. Like I said, it's not groundbreaking news. This album's bad, but the thing which I hope you can gain from this, which you haven't gained from any others, is that there are good songs on there, and they're songs that if you completely avoided the album, go give a listen. Castle and Arose, I think, are really beautiful songs, and I think are very interesting if you're a fan of Eminem. I think Bad Husband, although people aren't huge on the sound of it, I don't mind it, but at the very least, listen to the lyrical content of that. I think you'd find it interesting. Walk on Water, you've probably heard because it was a big single, but Believe, if you can just pretend it's produced well, I think you'd really enjoy. And yeah, I think that's all I got to say, because I've been recording for a very, very long time, and I got to piss, just being honest with you. Next Eminem video I'll do will probably be Death of Some Shady, just because that's the most recent one, and I'll end up going backwards from there. So yes, maybe it was weird to have this one out first, but this is the one I had the most thoughts about, just locked and ready to go, because I've had them ready to go for a long time. Hopefully this is one of the few negative reviews I do of albums, because like if I don't like an album, I'll just move on from it. Realistically, I don't really want to talk about it. Like there's no point of like being that hard on it. Obviously, like I always bring up like negative points of albums when I do talk about them, but that's not to be like, and this bit's shit. It's more just to give like a more of an interesting discussion point around it, and to be like, look, I'm not going to say everything's perfect, because it's not. Because at that point, what's the point of even doing discussions if everyone's just going to be like, yeah, this one's good, cool. You know, what's the point? But yeah, I'm definitely getting a bit wiggly because I gotta go pee. Thanks for listening to me yap. I gotta go, like, now. Sorry. Bye-bye.